So I put out my video on the scene subculture like a million years ago, or at least that's how it feels because 2020 happened, and it did pretty well, thank you for that. But more importantly, you guys had a lot to say regarding the topic. The comment section was just full of interesting takes, personal experiences and thoughtful speculations. I already replied to some of the reactions, but I wanted to make this video to go a bit deeper into some of the comments and give you my thoughts. This is Comment Comeback. What happened to scene kids? So first up, the most common reaction was people basically confessing their sin of staying seen after 2013, to which I say, go for it dudes. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed for liking harmless shit like edgy music and weird ass cartoons or whatever. Of course, don't do it just because it's cool or trendy or whatever. Express yourself the way you want to and feel comfortable with. Hell, I may no longer be a snotty 13-year-old edgelord anymore, but I still rock the look and the playlists with my mates, At least I graduated from the Neon Monster energy shirt and the Obey snapback. This next one is pretty interesting. This person points out the fashion and aesthetic similarities between Gyaru fashion and scene. Gyaru is this veteran Japanese fashion subculture. It has a wide spectrum of substyles, but essentially it's all different takes on the idea of exaggerated American party hard youth. I definitely see the connection between scene and a bunch of Japanese street styles, including Gyaru, and I'd probably also add visual kei to that pile as well, since just like scene it's also heavily inspired by glam rock and punk aesthetics. However, what I couldn't explain is the nature of this sort of cultural mashup between scene, which is an American-born phenomenon for the most part, and alternative street fashion from Japan. Thankfully, however, this comment came to the rescue, explaining how Gyaru evolved together with Western teen styles in the 2000s. It appears there is a real connection and mutual influence going on here. The comment then goes on to point to the recent revival of Gyaru fashion that's been going on, from the online resurrection of Egg magazine, which was influential in the community until it went defunct, to activity going on in Instagram and the formation of Papillion, a new-ish online publication made by Western Gyaru. Really cool stuff. Okay, so the next common point was people basically pointing out how scene is still alive at least to some extent on the internet, specifically on TikTok, Tumblr, SoundCloud and Friend Project, among others. If you don't know what Friend Project is, it's basically an old internet-style social media site that's been around since like 2008. It's very similar to Myspace. For years it was pretty unknown until relatively recently Gen Z kids found out about it and started reviving the old Myspace culture on it. It's a really interesting case study in internet culture in my view. I thought about making a full video on it, so tell me in the comments if that sounds interesting to you. Anyway, as for the other sites, yeah, definitely. There has been some renewed interest in scene for quite a while now. I mentioned that revival briefly at the end of the video as well, but I still kinda doubt scene is ever gonna get as nearly as mainstream as it once was, which was pretty much as mainstream gets, really, at the culture's peak at least. And that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. I just think that this wave's target audience is gonna be mostly the truly cultured Myspace connoisseurs, rather than the everyday party-hard suburban youth like it used to be. Also, some people pointed out how the new wave of scene has evolved and changed somewhat, and I totally agree. Scene is what scene kids want scene to be, and what that is changes with time and with the help of various factors in culture and reality. These two dudes argued that EDM and rave culture killed scene. I think that the EDM crowd was definitely a part of it, but I doubt we can completely pin this on the rave people. Scene kids took part in many other cultures, including but far from limited to rave, and when rave started evolving and becoming super mainstream around 2013-2014, it very much overshadowed scene. However, rave predates scene and also emo technically by a lot, so it's yet another factor in the cultural shift that killed scene if you ask me. This person's comment includes some pretty interesting speculation about the sort of cycle of nostalgia we've been seeing in culture for some time now, a phenomenon it names the vintage pattern. It basically refers to the way old things become part of current culture in new ways due to nostalgia in cycles of around 20 years, give or take. In Scene's case, the throwback influence is the hardcore culture emo came from in the 80s, and also hair metal and goth, which were also big at the time. Guess it's time to prepare for the 2041 TikTok e-boy revival, guys. Peck your boy spray. The comment also mentions how toxic MySpace culture was, and yeah, I can't argue with that. There was a lot of trashy toxic drama, sexual assault, bullying, and a lot more to unpack. Maybe I'll dive deeper into it someday, but for now I'd rather leave it in the dark MySpace past. So let's finish things off with the only somewhat negative comment. It's not even that negative, but this is a take I want to talk about. This guy here essentially says that the video was pointless, since the topic apparently doesn't matter. So first up, this is of course just this person's subjective opinion, just like my opinion is subjective, the difference being that his take has no real argument attached to it. In my humble opinion, the scene subculture and its history, downfall and resurrection do matter, and I tried my best to explain why in the video, but here's a more baked, condensed version of that. I think scene was probably the first subculture of its kind, the first completely internet-native, meme-driven 21st century subculture. The fact it got so mainstream then died seemingly out of nowhere is especially noteworthy, and it's part of the reason I believe it's an early indicator of a larger set of trends in the culture of our time. Remember Andy Warhol's famous quote on how everyone in the future will be famous for 15 minutes? I think our society has evolved in such a way that this became true for larger trends and cultural movements. Scene had its 15 minutes and then got thrown aside by the establishment and culture once newer cool things came along. The revival isn't going to restore the past, but it can certainly refine and mature the subculture, as well as pave the way towards something new and interesting in the future. Hell, that already happened, arguably. Saying all of that never mattered is dismissing the very real significance of such movements and reoccurring trends in our society. In many cases, culture reflects the reactions, feelings and motivations we have within our reality. If that doesn't matter, I don't know what does. Stay cultured, dudes. It's worth it. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. You're truly a magnificent edgelord, aren't ya? I couldn't go over every single comment since that would make this video way too long, but I think I got most of it. Thank you so much for watching, and please give this video a share if you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more regularly scheduled programming, and by regularly scheduled programming I mean me ranting about stuff. I was Eden from NotAimingForTheTruck. Peace.